You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Franco Luna, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. In this episode,
Nananatili ang ating layunin na makakapagpatayo ng dekalidad at murang pabahay para sa bawat pamilyang Pilipino, lalo na para sa mga mahihirap na ating mga kababayan.
focus muna tayo dun sa murang pabahay. Magagawa ba?
Meron pong natitirang 500, another 500 for 2029. Base po sa projections namin, by the end of the term of the current administration, makakagawa po tayo ng around 4 million units.
So by 2028, kung susumahin natin, actually ang malo-launch nyo ay 5.5 million.
Opo.
Short lang ng 500,000 dun sa target na 6 million. Bagamat hindi yung 1 million per year. We have a slow start, 500, 800,000. By 2025, magka-catch up na dun sa target natin na 1 million per year.
Yes, Your Honor.
That's Housing Undersecretary Emmanuel Pineda. He was speaking to senators at the Housing Department's budget hearing. The Marcos administration has taken on the goal of building 1 million houses per year. That totals a target of 6 million homes by the end of 2028. But as you heard, they don't seem optimistic about making that target anymore. Instead, they can only build 5.5 million housing units across the country. That's 500,000 short of its target.
Nung unang programa, yung mahihirap, tinatapo natin sa off-city. Diba? Relocation site. Diba? Para mabigyan ng murang pabahay. Kaya po ang reklamo po sa amin ng mga urban poor, nag-urban poor meeting po kami. Ano po ba ang gusto nyo? Sabi po nila, gusto namin in-city. Pero paano kayo bibigyan ng in-city? Kasi mahal.
Yan naman si DSUD Secretary Jerry Acuzar. The housing backlog in our country is estimated to be as high as 6.5 million homes. These aren't people, these are 6.5 million families as of 2023. Under the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino program funded by the private sector, each housing unit costs 1.2 million pesos with a monthly amortization of at least 3,500 pesos. The 4PH program aims to build 1 million housing units annually to erase the housing backlog before the end of the term of President Marcos Jr. in 2028. Of the 1.2 million pesos, the beneficiary will only pay 400,000 pesos in a loan payable for 30 years to state-run Home Development Mutual Fund with a 6% annual interest. Think about those numbers for a second. In this post-pandemic economy, kung informal settler ka, ma-afford mo ba yan? Lawmakers actually pointed that out, and here's what the Housing Secretary had to say.
Di pa, meron tayong Department of Labor. Kanya-kanya po kaming papel sa mundo dito sa kabinete. Ang papel po ng kabinete, pataasin ng sweldo at bigyan ng trabaho yung ibang Pilipino. Kami naman po sa DSUD, bigyan po ng pabahay. Basta ang programa po, may trabaho, may bahay. Minimum wage earner, sigurado po magkakabahay. Yung pong di nagtatrabaho, malamang di magkakabahay. Paano po yan mangyayari kung ikaw ay tamad at isa'y masipag? Paano pong natin paghihiwalay yung masipag at tamad? Kung minsan po, kailangan natin harapin yung katotohanan na sila po ay hindi nagsisipag.
Obviously, none of this is unique to the Philippines. It's estimated by the United Nations that we have a deficit around the world of 1.8 billion people not living in adequate housing, and 1 billion of them living in informal settlements. But one thing we do struggle with is how expensive housing has become, even for the government. Listen to Eva Marfil. She is the Regional Director of the Housing Department in Western Visayas.
What is low income para sa atin sa Pilipino, no? So it means not having or not earning enough money. Right now, I think We all know that the poverty threshold is being set by NEDA every 3 years. The last one is in 2021, and it says that for the Philippines, the poverty threshold is 12,030 pesos per month for a family to meet the food and non-food needs. So, magkano ba ang pwede nila ilaan sa pabahay when they are just earning 12,030 pesos a month?
Metro Manila's home affordability ratio is one of the most expensive in the region after cities in China, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Indonesia, according to the Urban Land Institute.
Informal settlers. Sino bang informal settlers? So those who settle on land of another without title or without right or without the owner's consent, whether in urban and rural areas. That is from the Philippine Statistics Authority. That is how they defined informal settler families when they did their survey. So marami naman sa informal settlers are actually nasa formal income earners sila. What I mean is, a teacher can live in an informal settlement, but being a teacher, she has a formal income. So yan, part sila ng mga targets namin. No? Policemen living in informal settlements but have formal income. So they can be part of our targets also. What do we mean when we say inclusive? So when it effectively serves and engages all people, takes into account gender and other facets of personal identity, and when initiatives, policies, processes, and services are accessible, accountable, and responsive to all members of society.
The biggest problem, though, is the availability of land. Tama, wala nang lupa lalo na sa mga urban areas. And if you can't own land, guess what? Residential rents across Metro Manila rose by 3.9% in 2022 from a year earlier and are still projected to increase by 2.3% in 2023. So it's not just houses built that we're lacking, it's houses that are accessible and affordable. Here's what Jason Catre had to say about it. He's the Philippine Country Director for Habitat for Humanity's Center for Innovation and Shelter.
Ang talagang kulang natin would be low-cost, economic, and socialized. Diyan talaga yung malaking glut. The data years ago shows na sa low-cost, kulang tayo ng more or less 600,000 unit. Low-cost would be roughly 3 million per unit, right? Pagdating sa economic, mga 1.7 million, kulang tayo ng 300,000 unit. Yung talagang malaking deficit is sa socialized housing, mga 500 per unit to 700. Kulang tayo ng roughly 5 million units, right? So, ito yung sinasabi kong we are in a state of chronic crisis.
We're pausing for a quick break now. When we return, we'll tell you about the solutions proposed by housing advocates.
One of the things that we're trying to do is to push for all government offices from national to local to barangay to be able to spot and release government land which can be used. But even that, one of the mayors, for example, I was talking to in Don Salvador Benedicto, for example, this is in Negros, he has no land even for their municipal hall.
That's Mardy Mapasuplido. She's CEO of Habitat for Humanity in the Philippines. She says not only is land scarce in urban areas, but there's also a growing shortage in rural areas too.
Either they're owned privately and the private owners of the land are not willing to sell them to government, or government has not allotted budget for this purchase of the land.
Which means any government housing initiatives remain at the mercy of landowners.
If you go around the different provinces, you think there's so much land. I'll give you an example. In Negros, okay, there's a lot of land. This is where I'm from, right? And yet so much of that land are owned by hacienderos, no, sugar planters. So families are not allowed, of course, to till the land, but they're also not allowed to live there after they reach the age of retirement.
So with these socioeconomic conditions, it's worth asking, will the 4PH program actually address the poorest of the poor? Kakayanin ba yan kung 390 pesos lang ang minimum wage mo? At Habitat for Humanity's Philippine Housing Forum, Groups came together to ask one question: how do we make housing more affordable?
Homeless People's Federation ay gumagawa ng participatory mapping. It's a citywide in partnership with the government. Nagpo-promote ng partnership and advocacy, capacity building and organizational development, promotion ng savings program, community upgrading, land acquisition and participatory site planning and housing design.
Yan naman si Ruby Haddad, National Coordinator ng Homeless People's Federation Philippines.
Nagkakaroon din po kami ng training and mapping training sa mga community. Nagkaroon ng mga settlement profiling, household surveys sa mga community, lalo na mga informal settlers, at tinuturuan din sila how to use the GPS device. Sila din po yung nag-a-analyze, nagde-data validate, at nagpa-finalize at pinipresenta po ito sa local government upang magkaroon po ng maayos na pagpaplano sa anumang mga development for the community.
She says having the communities participate in programs that involve them has made all the difference.
So yung process po ay nagkakaroon ng empowerment sa mga community. So sila ay naging malinaw sa kanila ano ba ang sitwasyon ng mga community at ano ba ang kailangan nila mga solusyon. Nag-enhance din ng mga relationship with the community and other national and local agencies. Nag-increase din ng recognition and participation of the urban poor sector in public planning process. So yung actions, dahil po sa maps and statistics, ito ay naging evidence based sa data for public financing and development planning. Government-assisted land acquisition, slum upgrading, and relocation.
But as with all things, it takes a literal village. And these things can't always come with profit in mind. Take this example from architect Arlene Lustero at the Philippine Housing Forum.
Humane, decent, and affordable housing varies. No? There's the self-initiated housing, and of course, there's the developer or contractor initiated. And of course, we don't expect the contractors to give away the house for free. No? There's always a factor of profit. But it's not a crime, no? But that's a given, no? A consideration. Of course, location is very important.
Arlene is actually Executive Director of Technical Assistance Organization Pilipinas Incorporated.
Locate all new government housing projects in safe and secure sites, kasi yun yung major na reklamo ng mga nasa resettlement sites na before. Make available loan package for house retrofitting with guidelines for disaster-resilient construction. As I said, where's the money? No? We can capacitate people, but if there's no fund, nothing will happen. Support site upgrading for on-site housing with options to increase density up to 5 stories.
According to the group, the National Economic Development Authority's baseline for affordability for housing loans used to be 30% of your income. But with how inflation has affected our spending priorities these days, most Filipinos might not be willing to spend that much anymore. She says there are 2 elements we need to make housing more affordable for Filipinos today. First, regular citizens and NGOs might inevitably have to step in where the government can't in today's climate.
Integrate nature-based solutions in housing projects. So we say if there are doctors to the barrios for sick, we can also have architects and engineers to communities. No? I make it 7 million sick houses that need doctors to diagnose and facilitate self-care.
But at the end of the day, housing is only part of the solution, because government housing programs should also come with livelihood opportunities. That means public housing should be close to schools, small malls, and public transportation. Here's Arlene Lustero again.
I say self-care. No? Well, if it's not affordable, then they have to do it in their own way, within their own capacity, with help of technical people. And stop making prescriptions without examination and diagnosis. So it's building houses is not equal to sheltering families. Yeah. And bring in real livelihoods, jobs into or closer to communities, and increase their income.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Freddy Blanco. Our Teka Teka News executive producer is Jill Caro, and our senior editor is Veronica Uy. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. Help Teka Teka News reach more people and keep the show going. Thanks for listening.